Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. This is Reservations, and I'm Rain Whalen.
And I'm, oops, all berries.
The widely underrated version of Captain Crunch.
Nope, I wouldn't say that.
Nah, man.
You prefer all berries?
No, I'm saying underrated.
Okay. All right.
I'm saying I like the standard Captain Crunch of just the squares and the berries.
Yeah, I like the squares and berries myself.
Dad is an oops all berries kind of guy.
Your dad?
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah. Okay. Dad is a connoisseur of Captain Crunch. I would definitely say oops all berries is in his top 2.
Wow.
I think peanut butter is his favorite one.
Okay.
But yeah, I distinctly remember multiple boxes of oops all berries in the house growing up.
More than one box at a time?
Yeah. And not at a time, but like going through them,
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if that's better or not, but yeah, okay, cool.
Well, and now that he's older, he can't enjoy the sugary cereals anymore.
Yeah. No, I get that.
Well, and if I ever want Ashley to not eat my cereal, I have to go for like Captain Crunch or something like that.
Well, in her defense, she probably just likes the roof of her mouth. You know what I mean? Like, we obviously don't care about
that. Do you ever have that with Haley where you have to get one specific cereal so she doesn't eat it?
Not necessarily, because we pretty much agree on most cereals. I do prefer like the Boo Berries and the Frankenberries, where she prefers Count Chocula. You know what I'm saying? But like,
hobby.
Other than the monster cereals are pretty on par. But we also get off-brand dog food bag cereal. So
so Ashley and I, obviously we love CT Crunch, but she does not like fruit flavored cereal. So if I really want to keep cereal to myself, I have to go like with Fruit Loops or Apple Jacks.
Okay.
Something where I'm like, no, this is mine.
This is my cereal.
Your own.
Okay, I gotcha. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the cereal podcast.
I don't know. Maybe that'll get views.
Just talking about cereal.
And just
sure.
So it's like the episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine where it's the one where I can't think of the actor's name, and you're gonna be so mad at me, but the Allstate guy, he and Holt are like talking about the different kinds of grains of rice that Holt likes, and he's like, that's just some of the rice I like. I feel like that's how that episode would go. Like, well, that's just some of the cereal. Like, I also like this kind of cereal.
Oh my god.
Also, dog food cereal. When I was a kid, everyone, that's not actual dog food cereal. It's cereal in a giant bag.
Anyway, yeah.
When I was a kid, that was like the holy grail of cereal. Like, I did not want boxed cereal. Now that I'm older, I don't care. Like, just give me the cereal.
Sure.
But yeah.
Yeah.
What a way to intro this episode.
Honestly, it's my fault, and we can track that all the way to my decision. So that's on me.
Considering, and it's interesting that we would talk about cereal, considering cereal is such an innocent thing in this movie that we're going to talk about. I mean, it's innocent, but we'll get there. So Jeremy, this is your pick. What are we talking about this week?
Alrighty, this week we are discussing Guillermo Del Toro's Pan's Labyrinth.
So as I said last week, I hadn't seen this, so this was a first watch again for me. And dude, it was awesome. Although I rewatched a little bit of it today, just to make sure I kind of had some things fresh in my brain. I would not recommend watching this movie on an iPad on a sunny day. I couldn't fucking see anything. I was literally watching it. If you're watching this episode, I was like couldn't fucking see.
Huh.
So I was like, I'm just gonna wait till I'm on my lunch break
Sure.
when I'm in the back and I don't
Hmm.
have the sunlight directly on my iPad.
Yeah, definitely.
But but yeah, man, it was awesome. I love Guillermo Del Toro's style. I mean, what he did with Hellboy 1 and 2 is
Yeah,
awesome. Um, I will
definitely.
never I will never forgive MGM for dragging their feet greenlighting The Hobbit because I would have loved to see his version of The Hobbit.
Yeah, definitely. That would have been really cool.
You know, no offense to Peter Jackson, what he did with Lord of the Rings is unprecedented, but honestly, Guillermo should have done The Hobbit, and I think we would have had a better set of movies. But
I agree.
that's for another time.
Yeah.
So, um, so what do you? I know I ask you this because usually it's only the ones that I haven't seen. Uh, when was the first time you saw this movie?
It wasn't that long ago. I like to think it was probably about 5, 6 years ago, maybe,
Okay.
that I saw it. And it was really because, I'd gotten over, like we were talking about, maybe like 10 years ago, I had finally gotten over my fear of subtitles. And so I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. Pan's Labyrinth. That's, in Spanish. Let's give that a try. Loved Guillermo del Toro. Obviously, loved Hellboy when that came out. That was something that
Mm-hmm.
I watched over and over and over again. Um, and since then, I've seen a bunch of his stuff, and Shape of Water is incredible. And um, recently, his new Pinocchio is awesome.
My
I
God,
know.
yeah.
And so I was like, let's do it. Let's do some Pan's Labyrinth. And not surprised that it was awesome. That it blew me away with the visuals. His practical makeup effects are awesome. His monster designs are always so creative and so visually striking. Um, and in this case, terrifying
Yeah.
as well. Um,
Yeah.
and he found a way to, you know, basically bring back this, old style of fairy tale um, for the modern era, right? Because I think
Mm-hmm.
people mostly think of like Grimm as like the Grimm fairy tales, um, and this is on par with that. I would say, especially in its ending and however you want to interpret how that went down. Um, that it wasn't a Disney ending, I guess,
Yeah.
and how even his fairy tale in this story has sort of these themes and these I guess lessons I guess you could learn from the story, and that however you choose to view it and however you choose to pick out what you think is important, um, I think is very cool, and it's very impressive that he's able to create something that emulates so much of what has already existed for like 100 years. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 100%. I agree. Um, yeah, it was. I feel like a lot of people say this when it comes to Guillermo del Toro, but it's something that I feel like we've never seen before, and I don't think we'll ever see anything like it again.
Yet still familiar, right? Because again,
Yeah,
it emulates those fairy tales.
yeah. So last week, you did the synopsis. Would you like me to do the synopsis this week?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, so Pan's Labyrinth takes place in Spain in 1944, 5 years after the end of the Spanish Civil War, which I'm not a history buff, so I don't really know what happened. But all we know is that Spain is still under fascist rule. But we don't focus on that as much. We focus on this little girl named Ophelia, who is traveling to the countryside with her pregnant mother to live with her stepfather, that they usually just refer to as the general. So
The
he's,
captain.
or the captain,
Sorry.
the captain. And he is the captain of this regiment that's in the countryside hunting these um, guerrilla soldiers. And Ophelia, we're already kind of tipped off that she may be the princess in a fairy tale that escaped the what's called the underworld, where she was curious about what human life is like, and when she escaped, she couldn't return. And her father, the king of the underworld, waits for her to return. And we'll get into it, but we really are seeing this from Ophelia's eyes. She seems to be the only one that can see the fairies and see um, a fawn that instructs her that she is the long lost princess, um, and that she will need to complete 3 tasks before she can return to the underworld. And while we have that story, we have sort of the quote unquote modern story, the real world story of the captain trying to hunt down these guerrilla soldiers, but having informants within his own base of Mercedes, his housekeeper, and the doctor. I don't remember his name.
That's okay.
But they are sort of informing to the guerrilla soldiers about their movements and them stockpiling resources for townsfolk that they're rationing off to townsfolk, and sort of undermining the captain, because fuck the captain, fuck that guy in the mouth. And the story is so interwoven with Ophelia's fairy tale story and the real world story, that it's really hard to, and we'll get into it a little bit more, discern what was real and what wasn't. Anyway, unfortunately, Ophelia's mother dies during childbirth. Her baby brother survives. And that's where things start to spiral out of control a little bit more. And Ophelia just wanting to leave this world behind and go back to being a princess, because she is now convinced that she is a princess. And I'm yada yada through a lot of stuff, mainly because I want to get into talking about it. The guerrilla soldiers then overtake the camp. The captain kills Ophelia, but then because she sacrificed herself, she does get to return to the underworld. That was the final test. And the guerrilla soldiers kill the captain, and that's Pan's Labyrinth.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. Again, I yada yada through a lot because I wanted to talk about. There's a lot we have to dissect. Not as much, I feel, like with Twin Peaks, but I think there's some stuff we have to unpack with this one.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
There is quite a bit, as a matter of fact. And, I want to go give a quick shout out and a little tease for what's to come this season. Shout out to Maribel Verdú. She was an amazing performance as Mercedes, and we will see her again this season. I'll tell you that.
The Flash?
Yeah.
She was in The Flash. She was Barry's mom.
Well, either way. We're not doing The Flash. So there's some process of elimination for you. So we'll see her again this season. So all right. We can start with the overall theme of the film in general.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So the overall theme of the film is the virtue of disobedience. Okay. So with Ophelia, with Mercedes and the Doctor, with the guerrilla resistance, right? This is
Hmm.
all of them are disobedient, but to in a positive way, right?
Hmm.
They're being disobedient um to like fascism for one, so that's good.
Yeah.
Uh, they're being disobedient to this authority that is harmful and controlling, right? Or um is is negative, like is evil in a sense. So I'll give you a few examples. So obviously the main ones with Mercedes, the Doctor, and the Gorillas, that they're disobedient to fascism, right? They're
Right.
disobedient to what has become Spain at this point, right? And
Hmm.
spoilers, just because the captain dies, fascism still reigns and will still reign for another 30 years, okay, in
Yeah.
Spain. So them doing this doesn't change anything, right? Fascism still exists in Spain at this point and will continue
Yeah.
to. So with Ophelia, it's really interesting because her disobedience carries her through these tasks, these magical tasks to regain her status as princess in the underworld, right?
Hmm.
A really cool example of this is with the Pale Man. Okay, when we
Yeah.
get to that Pale Man, um, which by the way made Stephen King squirm in his seat. And
Really.
Guillermo Del Toro said that was better than winning an Oscar. Was getting under Stephen King's skin, right? Um, so there's two examples of disobedience with the Pale Man. One was when the fairies lead her to the locked compartments.
Hmm.
They point her to the middle one, and she says no, this one, right? And she changes to the one next to it. Okay,
Hmm.
disobeying the fairies, yet it was still the correct decision, right? So like
Right.
following her instincts and following like what she believes to be correct, right? And the other was eating the grape or two grapes
Hmm.
um, off of the table, which the fawn strictly forbade. Right? He said it
Hmm.
like 3 times. Don't eat anything off the table. And of
Yeah.
course, I woke up the Pale Man, and he killed a couple of fairies. Which, if you're like a fan of art and art history, Guillermo del Toro loves. I think it's Francisco Goya is his name. There's a great painting. I think it's called Saturn. Saturn eats a sun, or Saturn devouring a sun, something along those lines, and it mimics the Pale Man eating the fairies. That's where you got
Oh,
the
okay.
look at that. You can throw it up here if you want later if you remember. Um, so it's almost like she was supposed to do that, right? Same thing at
Hmm.
the very end where she disobeys the fawn for the last time and doesn't sacrifice a drop of her brother's blood, right? And she sacrifices her own.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, not to her. It wasn't her choice to do her blood necessarily, but she definitely wasn't going to um, sacrifice her brother's blood, and that was the right
Yeah.
decision, right? Much like choosing the box was the right decision. Much like um, eating the grape for whatever reason was like the right decision, and it in that situation it almost seemed like she was entranced to do so. I saw a video where they talked about like the music changes a little bit, and there's like this um like these chimes right before she takes the grape, and her posture sort of changes, and so it's almost like she was destined to do it anyway. Um, but there's lots of little pieces like that the along the movie and along her journey into reclaiming her place as princess with these challenges. And it was also something with the frog as well, the toad.
He had to. She had to force him to eat these stones so she could
Yeah,
get the gold key.
right. But there was something about disobedience there as well, and I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time remembering.
Um,
This was a few days
I
ago,
mean,
but
she wanders off into the forest in her new dress and shoes that her.
I think that's what it was. You're right, because
Yeah.
she's disobeying her mother by not only getting her new stuff dirty, which I loved that the dress looked like Alice in Wonderland, right?
Yeah.
That is of course on purpose. Um, and later on, her red shoes are the Reservos. But yeah, I guess there's some disobedience there as well. I also saw another video discussing her hands, which I thought was really interesting, but I didn't think there was much there. There's a little bit
Mhm.
of stuff, not too much. It has to do with like what she does with her left hand. Um, and the first and most important was she offers her left hand to the captain when she gets to the base. Um, and he grabs it, squeezes it, and tells her it's the other one, right?
Mhm.
It's like your first indication that the captain's like not a good person.
Yeah, and only is dealing with Ophelia because he's married to her mom.
Right. And actually, what's really interesting is if you speak Spanish, you know. But if you don't speak Spanish, you may not have caught this when they show up to base and they meet with the captain when they first get there. He says "bienvenidos," um, which is a greeting, but he should have said "bienvenidas" because they're women. It's
Mm-hmm.
the mother and the daughter, but he wasn't talking to them. He was talking to his son, right? To his unborn
Mm-hmm.
son, because that's what's most important to him. She's basically just um, she's basically just a breeder, right? To
Yeah.
him, right? Which I thought was really interesting. Just a little insight into his character there. That's what I got so far. What do you got so far? Sorry, had a
No,
break
you're
at the
good.
moment.
No, it's all good, man. So, okay. I hit my mic.
Jesus Christ.
Okay. So the thing that I really wanted to talk about was the fact that there are these two stories, the
Mhm.
real world story and then the fairy tale story. And like I said during the synopsis, there are moments where it's hard to tell what was real and what wasn't.
Mhm.
Like with the mandrake root. Um, you know, when Ophelia does what the fawn says and puts it in fresh milk and gives it 2 drops of blood, she sees it moving and
Mhm.
almost cooing like a baby. But then later, when the captain finds it and presents it to her mom, it's not moving anymore and it looks just like a ginger root, essentially.
Mhm.
Um, so I wasn't having a hard time, but I was like, okay, so Guillermo's really leaning into what was real, what wasn't.
Well, here's what I
Um,
like about the way Guillermo shoots these scenes and this sort of ambiguous points of view is like within that, right? Yes, he's holding it and it's not moving, and he shoves it in her face and throws it in the fire. Um, maybe it just doesn't have time to move. You could say, or it's like it is moving, but he's not paying attention, or um, because when he throws it in the fire, it does move. But who's looking at it? Ophelia, right?
mhm,
And no one else is. However, her mother immediately falls ill as soon as the root is burned, right? And I saw what was really interesting. Someone was discussing at the very end when Ophelia, her brother, and the fawn are in the maze, the labyrinth. My apologies. Um, and when she refuses to sacrifice her brother, the fawn says, okay, well, you're on your own, basically. And he sort of backs out of frame, and as soon as he does that, the captain gets there, right, Videl.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's sort of like, okay, now the fawn has disappeared. However, um, Fidel, Videl, whatever, not Fidel, um, he's impaired. He's been drugged, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so you could argue that he's just not seeing the fawn because of his altered state, right?
Right.
Or you could say that it's not there at all, and all of this is a coping mechanism for Ophelia to get through this stage in her life, right? To get through the death of her
Mm-hmm.
father, to get through this new place she's living, to get through having to deal with the captain and having to um, deal with his reign of terror and this fascist regime, and dealing with the war that has passed but is still somehow going on around them by them um, fighting the resistance. I don't know.
Well, and
I'm not sure, right? I like both options, so that's sort of a cop out because I like both options. So
and I was gonna say, Guillermo really stresses the point with multiple characters, almost essentially saying that they grew out of believing in such things. Mercedes, tells Ophelia, I used to believe in fairies, but then I got older. And then, her mother, right before her mother dies, she says, like, the world isn't full of magic. The world is cruel. And, so I mean, who knows? Maybe you're right. Maybe both things are true. And Ophelia, you know, is just this little girl who is lost in her own imagination. Or maybe it is real and the adults can't see it.
I do know when I first saw the movie, I thought for sure it was a coping mechanism, and that's what was going on, and that's what the movie was. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but now I'm not so sure the second time. I don't know because I like the idea of it being real, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, of her being able to notice all of these things that others around her have sort of um, blocked out of their view, or as the end of the film states, they just don't know where to look anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and
Yeah, because, we see that fig tree blossom,
mhm.
so
Yeah, but
and
again,
and that's what the fawn told her.
I just love that Guillermo shoots it either way, to where either way is valid and it's fine to think either way, because even when she goes into the underworld and she is welcomed by her mother and her father and the fawn, and the fairies have been restored, um and people celebrate her for making the right decision and for um validating her space as princess, right? But then
Mm-hmm.
we cut back to Mercedes, Pedro and the resistance, and Ophelia is still on the ground, you know,
Yeah.
and she's still there. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. It could be, just final dying thoughts, and her feeling that she has succeeded, um,
Mm-hmm.
or her soul has made it to the underworld, and that is what we're seeing, right? Maybe not.
Right.
Maybe her physical body has nothing to do with it. Maybe it's her soul or her spirit um, has made it to the underworld to take her place as princess. I don't know. Um,
I don't know either, man. But see, that's hard, especially because for me, this being a first watch, a part of me wants to believe that Guillermo was presenting everything the way we're seeing it. So for
mhm.
Ophelia, it was real. Everything was real, and that the adults just couldn't see it. But then another part of me, the the part of me that knows, just like other directors, Guillermo does everything intentionally, and there's a reason behind it. A part of me wants to believe that it was just a coping mechanism, and that, you know, a part of her thought that she did succeed, and she just, you know, I'm gonna choose to believe that it was real, that
Yeah.
everything that she did to go back to the underworld was real, and that uh because it kind of reminds me of like a Wilfred situation, like when I know it's an odd example because that's a comedy show and this is a very serious, well, an epic fantasy, but when we get the reveal that Wilfred has just been a dog the whole time,
Mm-hmm.
personally I didn't really like that,
Mm-hmm.
because then it solidifies that Ryan's just been crazy this whole time. But then for me, if like I were to believe that for this, that Ophelia has just been in her own imagination,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know, and a part of me doesn't want to believe that. A part of me wants to believe that she really did go on this fantastical adventure and was brave and was almost killed by the Pale Man,
Yeah.
and that you know the fawn really was looking after her, but I don't know, man.
Yeah. Um.
All right,
Yeah.
get Guillermo on the phone.
Yeah. If only. Um. Yeah, man. It's a tough one for, but of course that's the whole idea, right? That's
Yeah.
why movies are so great, and that's why Guillermo shot it in the way he did. There's no definitive answer. There's no, like, or maybe there is. Maybe he thinks that, if you just take what you see at the very end with the stick bug and with the um with the flower, that that's all the info you need to know that it was all true and it was all real, and the fawn really does exist, and she really did go and complete these mystical, fantastical tasks, and she really is in the underworld. um I don't know. A part of me kind of likes that it's a coping mechanism more. um
Well, I was just about to say, because I was thinking about it while you were talking, there might be more evidence to support that, because you know there's that scene when before her brother is born, she tells him, you know, if you don't hurt our mom, I'll make sure you're a prince when I go back home.
mhm.
And and then she kind of tells the fawn, like I'm willing to give up everything for him. Um, but unless I missed it, I didn't see her little brother there. So you would think that maybe,
He
I don't
was.
know.
She was holding him.
She was holding a baby. Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Well then, fuck. Never mind. Because I thought for sure, I was like, well, she didn't seem too concerned. Like, hey, I promised my unborn baby brother that he would get to be a prince,
Yep.
and I didn't see a baby there. So I was about to say, like, maybe you're right. Maybe it was just all a coping mechanism for her to.
No, she was
But
holding him.
son of a bitch.
I know. I know. Um, okay. So, let's go ahead and start our praise for Doug Jones.
Dude, Doug Jones
Uh,
is the
Incredible.
best.
I mean, absolutely incredible performances for both the Fawn and the Pale Man.
Was he the fawn?
Yeah,
I knew he was the pale man.
yeah, he's both. Um, and the designs, man. I mean, Guillermo is. So see, there I go again. Thinking we're friends. Guillermo del Toro is
Mr. Del
such
Toro.
such a master in this craft of creating in designing creatures. He is the best at it. I don't, he is famous for writing and drawing in notebooks throughout production and throughout the creative process of writing a story and in creating a new world. And I mean, it shows that he takes so much pride and so much attention to detail in creating these creatures in these worlds. Again, the fawn is a fantastic design, and the Pale Man is one of the scariest things I've ever seen. So,
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and also shout out to Abe Sapien from Hellboy.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, dude. So I've seen a lot of like the Pale Man. Um, but yeah, watching the scenes with the fawn, like it's just so insane to me that uh Guillermo came up with that design. And I mean, and same also with the Pale Man. And I think what was most terrifying with the Pale Man is the fact that how is he simultaneously that slow but also that fast?
Yeah, yeah.
Like he was moving so slowly, but like he caught those fairies like it was nothing.
There's something about too like a sort of disproportionate design. So with him, he's uncomfortably disproportionate because they did a little CGI trickery with his legs to make them so thin, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it just looks so uncanny and so strange that it makes him so scary and so much scarier than if he were to have proportional legs to his body. um and of course the sagging skin and the eye
Oh, God.
sockets in his palms, of course. um Poor Doug Jones had to look through the nostril holes uh to be able to see. um so
Uh
that must have been a challenge for sure.
yeah, but man, but yeah, Doug Jones is just so he's so awesome. I'm just gonna go off tangent just for a second. He shows up in the What We Do in the Shadows TV show.
Yes.
He's known as the Baron. Oh, you that's right. You finally watched it. And I
All
love
kind of
that later on he just gets to be Doug Jones
he gets
with
to
a
be Joe Dust
wig.
for a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Like they don't really put him in any prosthetics until until oddly enough, Guillermo uh opens a door to the sun outside and it fries half of his face.
Again.
But yeah, again. But yeah, man, Doug Jones is it's so interesting to watch him move in the makeup because again, for our Hellboy fans out there, he was Abe Sapien as well, and it's just so interesting. And I feel like I've seen the GQ interview where he talks about all the creatures he's played, and I just,
And
I love.
he is he's literally been doing this, I mean, before Guillermo del Toro, because he is also in Hocus Pocus. He's the
Yeah,
yeah. What is his name in Hocus
Billy.
Pocus? Billy, yeah.
Yeah,
He just knows
where he put.
how to encapsulate a character in such a way where we'll never know it's him unless we read the credits, because he's so covered in in makeup and prosthetics and whatever. But it's just the way, you're right, it's the way he moves, it's the way he embodies each character, that he knows that the fluid motion and how he and how he moves within each character gives it so much more depth and so much more three-dimensional um, character, right?
Mm-hmm.
That he's not doing the same thing when he's each character, right? Like Abe moves so much differently than the Fishman in Shape of Water, even though they have similar designs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and
Well,
same,
and
with the Fawn and the Pale Man, you know what I mean? Like he just knows how to do it. He's amazing.
well, and here's a little tidbit. Most people don't know this. I only know this from hopefully again Future Rain credits this video. He's been doing better about that. He was a mascot for McDonald's called Mac Tonight.
That's right.
He was the giant moon guy.
That's right.
And
I did know that.
it's yeah, man, Doug Jones is the best, and
It's
I love
nightmarish.
that.
I'll tell you that. I've seen those ads, those TV ads, and they're creepy, man. I don't like those.
But you know, like a giant crescent moon man playing the piano, telling you to buy a Big Mac.
No, no. I like it's Doug Jones. Other than that, I don't like.
But yeah, man, Doug Jones is the best. And I love that he and Guillermo Del Toro have this amazing friendship. That Doug was essentially the only American actor on this set.
Yeah.
It's.
I know.
So would that mean that Guillermo had hired a voiceover person for the Fawn, or was that really Doug
out,
Jones?
If that was Doug Jones or not. I should have looked that up.
I mean, if that was really Doug Jones, like props to him for learning fluent Spanish,
or at least phonetic Spanish. You know what I mean?
That's true. Yeah. Or who knows? Maybe Doug Jones already knew how to speak fluent Spanish.
It's possible. Not out of the realm of possibilities. No. Pablo Aiden, or
okay,
Edan, voice. He's the narrator and the Fawn.
So, which means they probably had to have Doug. Well, they probably still had to teach him phonetically to make sure his mouth was moving to the same cadence.
Yeah, you're right.
So either way, he would have had to learn some form of Spanish.
It's still a great vocal performance as well. You know,
absolutely. Well, I mean, absolutely. You know, I mean, what did you say the actor's name was again?
Oh, Pedro Edan. Oh no, Pablo Edan.
Pablo. I mean, his voice is so distinct, and it matches the look of the Fawn. But yeah, I mean, but Doug was really putting in that work, you know.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm glad that it said that that he's the voice of the Fawn. Because if not, I would have just thought that was Doug Jones for the rest of my life. Or just assumed it was Doug Jones.
Okay. Speaking of the Fawn,
sure.
I want to talk about the Fawn for a second because I really, really liked how Guillermo presents this character to us.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know if he's good. We don't know if he's evil. You know, it's sort of ambivalent. And I understand it's on purpose, but yeah, like when we first meet him, and because I noticed it when he yells at Ophelia for disobeying him,
mm-hmm.
that he progressively looks better throughout the movie. Because when we first meet him, he looks really, you know, weathered and old, and you know, he's got like kind of like eye crusties. But then towards the end, when he's wanting to sacrifice her brother, he looks young almost.
I don't think I noticed that.
Maybe that was just me, but I did feel like it was like he looks different now. Is he like? Is because she's doing these trials, he's regaining some of the magic.
Interesting. I don't think I ever noticed that.
But you know, but it is so interesting that the Fawn is sort of our guide into this fairy tale part of the story. Because again, you know, we don't really know, and especially Ophelia even asks him, how can I trust you? You know, which I think is a fairly decent question, considering we don't know who the fuck this guy is.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because, like, well, the fact that the Fawn is a guide, I mean, that's sort of on purpose, right? That goes with mythology or whatever fantasy.
You know what it kind of
magic.
reminded me of? It reminded me of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shout out to James McAvoy's Mr. Tumnus.
Yeah. Yeah, that is what it feels like. And what it's probably, I mean, not emulating on purpose, or it might, he probably likes C.S. Lewis. I mean, he likes Tolkien, so why not?
That's true.
But yeah, you're right. There is this sort of ambiguity with where we stand with the Fawn, right? And if he's good or evil, right? We know that he is this sort of authority figure that Ophelia is disobeying, right? Again, this is the courageous disobedience that is the overall theme of the film. Yet he does seem like also this comforting figure, right? Someone who is watching over her, giving her the information she needs, and again, a guide, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's, I always go back to it. I think it's just because, like, I love the image so much. Is Drew Struzan's artwork for Pan's Labyrinth that was commissioned after the movie came out, that they didn't use for the poster artwork. The
Interesting.
studio said no.
It's not like Drew Struzan has been putting in work for Warner Brothers, because wasn't the American distributor a Warner Brothers company?
I don't know who the distributor was. That's a good question. But after a while, commissioned artwork became too expensive, or at least that's what the studio thought. And so
it was Picture House, because on my Criterion there's a little Warner Brother logo right there.
So yeah, but it's that image of I'm sure we're using it, of the Fawn holding Ophelia and comforting Ophelia, right? And of course that's like this. It's not an accident that this is what Guillermo wanted to display in the image. That he is this comforting figure, this guide, this person who's watching over her, right? Or figure that's watching over her. And that when the Fawn is introducing himself and trying to explain who she is, right? That there's been many iterations of her, and I there's something about beings that are so old that I find fascinating, right? I love that he says he's been known by many names and all of that stuff. I like stuff like that. That he's so old that he just stops giving himself a name. It reminds me at the end of "It's Such a Beautiful Day," where Bill just kind of stops remembering what his name was, and he stops remembering what people looked like and all that kind of stuff. Which I don't know, I like that, and I like that sort of elongated time.
And it's sort of and maybe I could give you some sort of answer to that, because I think it has something to do with he's seen the world as sort of like an ageless creature who just kind of sits back, I guess. Maybe, I don't know. It does remind me a lot, since you're pulling up examples, and it's a good way for me to shoehorn in Doctor Who. Maisie Williams shows up in the show, and her character is like that. The Doctor saves her when she was like a little Viking girl, but he saves her for like all time, and eventually she stops referring to her former name. She just calls herself Me. because that's who she is. She goes, I'm me,
Well, it's
and
also
that's
like
who I
that
am.
story in the Sandman as well. That guy
Yeah,
who keeps living and living and living, right?
yeah.
That they visit every
Dude,
100
shout out to
years.
the Sandman. Now that the strike is over, they get started on season 2 again.
Uh,
Um,
yeah,
but yeah, no, I see where you're coming from because I do like that. I was really enjoying the Fawn, you know, because I feel like that's also a very ominous line to speak to a character. Oh, I've been known by many names,
yeah,
which I think is another thing that kind of tipped me off. Is like, should we trust him? Like,
yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, I'm sure there are clues that we can trust him right away. I'm probably just too dumb to pick up on it. Um, and I'm sure, by the way, that there are references throughout this film that I'm just not getting, right? Because of course I get like the Alice in Wonderland, I get the Wizard of Oz, I get
mhm.
some of these references, but I'm sure there are some that I'm just not getting, right? And I wish that I knew more about this kind of stuff because it would make this film even more enjoyable, I think, because Guillermo Del Toro loves fantasy and he loves fairy tales and he loves these stories. And I'm
Mhm.
sure he's pumping in so many references to all sorts of things in this film that I just don't get, which is a real shame. I did understand the Goya thing that I got, uh,
Yeah.
but other than that, I don't know.
Well, here's a good pivot. I want to just briefly, because I didn't want to really talk about this too much, was the captain himself.
Sure, I mean, no,
Because
he's an extremely important figure, right?
yeah, because I like that he was written as, this very evil person, but he's not evil for evil's sake, Um, there's more beneath the surface, which I kind of wish we would have gotten. We were getting clues to, like with the watch. When we see him, trying to keep up with this watch, and we
Mhm.
learn it's because his father, who was a general, smashed the watch right before he died, so his son would know what time he died. Um, which I find just so fascinating,
Yeah,
uh, because it explains a lot, but not enough of who the captain is.
yeah, because he's too. There may be a reason for it, and there may be motivations there, but he is just so unbelievably evil um, that it's hard not to just think of him just as evil, right? And of course, and it's in this
Mhm.
fairy tale setting where you know we're so used to like two-dimensional evil characters in these sort of stories, right?
Mhm.
They're evil to be an adversary, you know. That's what they're there for. And his character is terrifying. I wouldn't say he's unpredictable because he is predictable in the way that if you get in his way, he's going to kill you. I mean, that's who he is, right?
Yeah.
That scene where I think it's the moment you quickly find out that this story is not for children is where
Oh, when he beats that guy
he beats that man and caves his face in, right?
with a bottle.
And then kills him.
Yeah.
It's terrifying. I mean, that's and it lets you know exactly what the captain's about. If you thought he was evil before, here's something else to be scared of. Um, and that poor guy that they captured from the resistance. Um,
Dude. Oh my god.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the if you can count to 3 without stuttering, I'll let you go.
Mhm.
Like, oh, god. And then man, and Guillermo really knows how to build tension because he gets through 1 and 2
Yeah.
and the captain's like, "Good, very good. One more." And oh, dude.
A part of
My
me
god.
thinks he did it on purpose because again, this overall theme of courageous disobedience. I think he may have stuttered on purpose. I don't know why I think that,
Okay.
because he did get through 1 and 2 just fine. Um, he is scared, but I think if he were to if he were to have gotten through 1 through 3, he's sort of doing what he's told. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that's no. Right? He's not going to give this guy what he wants, right?
Well,
Um,
and as we learned, that guy did talk and tell the captain a little bit,
unfortunately, right? Um,
but but yeah, and then there's that other scene with the captain that I kind of wish got expanded on when he's shaving and then he stops and he slits his own throat through the mirror.
mhm.
Like I'm like, okay, so do you hate who you've become, or
That's interesting.
like, well, and seeing
Yeah,
like this is after, of course, we get the reveal of his father's watch.
yeah,
So maybe when he looks in the mirror, he sees his father.
perhaps. Yeah. That would be a good interpretation. Another one would probably be maybe he feels that he's gone too far, but there's no turning back. But I doubt that. Um, it
Yeah,
might be
considering,
his father. Yeah, might be that.
yeah, considering he kills Ophelia without a second thought.
Doesn't even
Like,
care. Um, the same thing with the doctor. The same thing with pretty much anybody that
yeah,
gets in his way. Uh, Mercedes only got away because she, sliced his face open. And
yeah,
then was rescued, of course, by the resistance in Pedro. Um, and but I like that Guillermo del Toro is so good at giving you real world scenarios to convey ideas, right?
uh huh.
I think if he hadn't have said it in fascist Spain, um, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if it would have been as powerful or if it would have mattered as much to me, because setting it, and that's why we spend so much time there. We spend so much time with fascist Spain because you need stakes. You need to know, you know, the virtue of disobedience, right?
Yeah, I mean, and I agree. I agree. I feel like had this just been any other story, you know, um, like it's a bad example, but I don't know if you've seen it. The Don't be mad at me.
We'll see.
The the Disney film Luca.
I have not.
It's good. I think you'd enjoy it. But this is why it made me think of that, because Luca takes place at a very specific time in Italy
Uh,
where they're dealing with mermaids. And I feel like at Disney, much like what Guillermo done, I feel like if they had set this at any other time, I feel like we still would have enjoyed the film. I just don't think it would have been as captivating.
mhm,
Like you said, there needs to be stakes.
right.
And another thing that I recently learned about Tolkien and Lord of the Rings, a lot of people were drawing parallels to the two world wars that he lived through. Um, and a lot of people were seeing similarities in the Lord of the Rings and World War One and World War Two.
Interesting. Okay.
So I feel like I feel like Guillermo was using some of that too, because we know he's a big fan of Tolkien. Uh, I feel like he knew like I should give this like a real history scenario.
Mhm.
Because yeah, I agree. I feel like without these other stakes going on in the background, it would have been just another. Not saying there's anything wrong with this. It would have been sort of like another Hellboy, essentially.
Oh,
Like again, not saying there's anything wrong with it. I love Guillermo's Hellboy movies. I think they're fantastic. But the there's not really any stakes per se.
mhm.
Um, it just kind of like how you teased this episode. a creature feature, essentially. I feel like
Yeah.
had he not put it in fascist Spain, people would have been like, "Oh, this is just another creature movie from Guillermo Del Toro."
Right. Yeah. And, it's of course an overpowering evil force and having to defy all odds to, defeat it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which in true fairy tale fashion doesn't happen at the end, right?
Nope.
And I think that you get that victory at the end with killing the captain, but you don't. But if you know, then you know that that's not the end of it, and that's just how the story just keeps going. Um, with fascist Italy or Spain. Um,
Well, and and they even put that in the movie. The doctor says just because even if you kill him, it doesn't mean they'll bring someone in else just like him.
right,
Yeah.
right, exactly. And that's there's I I find it fascinating that Del Toro has this fascination with the Spanish Civil War, and I like that it's in multiple movies of his. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's cool. I don't know. I think it's an interesting backdrop for sure, and it's such a
Well,
significant
because
part of their history, of course,
mm-hmm.
and it's a relatively um, modern part of their history. You know,
Yeah,
it's not like
yeah,
we're setting things in the American Civil War that um, which happened
yeah.
a super long time ago, 1800s. I do remember that. Anyway, um, but this is more of a contemporary example in their history, even though it was during like World War II, um, which is still a long time ago. But um, I don't know. I think it's just really fascinating. I think it's really interesting that he keeps going back to this point in Spain's history. He's not even from there, so
I was about to say, he from Mexico?
Mexico. Yeah.
But yeah, but it is interesting, because as we were kind of talking about off mic, this is sort of a spiritual sequel to The Devil's Backbone, um, which I have not seen, but I do know the Spanish Civil War is a big backdrop to
Yeah.
that one as well.
That one's cool. That one's a ghost story.
Um, yeah. Now, before we get to the wrap up,
Mhm.
because I feel we're leading there, I have one big question for you about the film.
Okay.
Who is Pan?
Oh, yeah. Um, Pan is like, okay, I'm pretty sure because that's not okay. Pan's Labyrinth is not the direct translation.
Right.
Um,
Yeah,
uh,
it's the labyrinth and the fawn.
right. I think Pan's Labyrinth for American audiences or for English speaking audiences, I think Pan is the fawn. Um, like,
So you ready for this?
yeah.
I I read this today. Guillermo says Pan is not the fawn.
Well, I know that, and but I
Oh,
think,
okay.
but for English speaking audiences, I think, um, like there's got to be something in literature where Pan is the name of a fawn. I think that
I think so.
there's that translation to where it's sort of like what's the difference between a sorcerer's stone and a philosopher's stone, right? What the fuck's the difference? You know,
Yeah.
why change it?
For those of for those of everyone who doesn't know, in the UK, the first Harry Potter movie is the Philosopher's Stone,
Book.
and in the US it was the Sorcerer's Stone. Um, even though I'm like 90% certain the book, even in the US, was the Philosopher's Stone.
Yeah, I don't know, but um, yeah, I mean, why change it, right? So why not have it be the labyrinth and the
The
fawn?
labyrinth and the fawn, because I'm sure someone at Warner Brothers and their all their illustrious smartness was like, audiences aren't going to get the Labyrinth and the Fawn. Call it Pan's Labyrinth.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know, because I mean there's a long history of movie titles being translated differently in different countries, either for words mean different things in different countries, or phrases don't really make sense, or right, things just don't directly translate. In this
Right.
instance, I think maybe it could be one of, like, maybe it just sounds better in Spanish and it doesn't sound that good in English, right?
Maybe.
Or maybe the direct translation, which is the Labyrinth and the Fun, I think, is like the
Mhm.
direct translation. Maybe that doesn't sound as good, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
I do realize that, and I know intellectually that Pan is not the name of the fawn. I know that, but nothing else makes sense. So I don't know.
Yeah. I meant to keep looking into that today, but I got kind of busy, so I was just like, you know what? This is what the podcast is for.
It's for speculation. It makes
All right,
perfect sense.
buddy. Are you ready to wrap up?
Yes, I feel like we're gonna have to do this all over again. And we've missed so much, and that I just don't, I neglected to take notes this time. That's on me. I was just watching the movie. I can't. This is where the subtitles get me, because I can't write and read at the same time. So I can't just sit there and do both. So I'm like, I'll remember. And I just flat out didn't. So
I mean, I feel like if we were to do like a redo of this episode, or like a part 2 later on, I feel like maybe we could just talk more about like the trials that Ophelia goes through. Maybe,
sure.
I don't know.
Well, and then like, I even texted Zach on, for you listening, relative to this, it would have been last week. We finished our episode on Place Beyond the Pines.
Place Beyond the Pines.
Yeah, we finished our episode. As soon as I logged off, I went, shit. Like, I should have brought up generational trauma. Why didn't I do that? That was dumb of me. And I could have referenced the show Watchmen, which I love so much, and
Oh man.
and how they also use generational trauma in their storytelling, and and it's literal trauma, like and pain and trauma are literally transferred from parent to child in this world with the squid. And I'm just like, I can't believe I missed that for Place Beyond the Pines, but here we are. So I'll probably do the same with Pan's Labyrinth, I'm sure. So I don't know. I guess this is just we've done this for almost 5 years, and we're still getting the hang of
it. Well, not to worry, buddy. Next week's episode, you won't have to do that much research on,
because I'm an expert already.
Well, and this one's just going to be kind of fun.
Okay, cool. Well, that's
fine. So you ready to hear what we're going to talk about next week, buddy?
Yeah.
So next week, just because it's kind of hot right now in the news, as it were, next week we are going to be discussing Edgar Wright's adaptation, Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Okay. Cool.
You just recently saw this movie. I have seen this movie the day it came out.
Saw last year.
Have loved it. 1, for Edgar Wright, and 2, just because it's my kind of movie, comic book literally brought to life. And of course, many of you who are also Scott Pilgrim fans, you'll know that the Netflix show Scott Pilgrim Takes Off is up. I have yet to finish it. so far I find it different than the movie.
Mhm.
It is sort of like a retelling in a way, but the movie's fantastic. It's got a great cast. I mean,
Yeah.
you've got Captain Marvel, Captain America, and Superman all in one movie right before they were all those three characters.
Yeah.
Plus you got Michael Cera. I mean, it's Michael Cera.
Yep.
Like,
yeah, Kieran
and
Culkin.
oh yeah.
You know, like Succession fans out there, like myself.
Well, and this, I'm pretty sure this movie like revived his career. Because then, like after this, I distinctly remember him like showing up in like everything.
Yeah, he
And
was in
then
quite a bit, and of course, you know, now he's like a household name.
just
Roman.
like his brother.
No, Roman. He's the best. Succession's the best. You guys should watch Succession.
Don't tune in next week. Just go watch Succession.
Yeah, totally. Oh man. Okay, cool. Scott Pilgrim. That'll be fun. So
Yeah,
not an expert
I had
by any means, but yeah.
I had some options, but I was like, you know what, let's do a fun one. Let's do one where we don't have to do a lot of research and a lot of trying to understand the meaning of certain things.
Spoilers. So. I don't have any fun ones left, so I don't think.
No, I know you don't. No,
you're fun to me.
No, after this is my last fun one, because then all the other ones, yeah, especially the other. This is a tease for later on. The other Lynch film on my list.
Mm-hmm.
I already know that one's gonna be a long one.
Yeah. So I mean, it'll be fun either way. I kind of like the extra work. It's just when I don't have a full grasp of what I'm talking about most of the time, I get frustrated with myself. So, but it just makes me work harder. So
yeah,
that's all it is.
Yeah, but all right, everyone. Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode on Pan's Labyrinth, and we will see you next week for Scott Pilgrim versus the World.